Hello and welcome back to the Transcendence podcast. Today I am joined by my friend Nik Huno from the south of Italy, and I'm really excited to chat with you, man, about this lifestyle transition and journey you've been on over the past few years. So thank you for taking the time to come on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Awesome. So maybe we can dive in right there. I would love to know, because I've been seeing glimpses of maybe a little bit of break in content, living a slower lifestyle, moving to Italy. I would love to hear the story from your perspective on this internal shift towards more of a slow lifestyle rather than maybe keeping up with the hustle and bustle of the creator economy. Like, what's that been like?
Yeah, yeah. It's been a pretty natural transition that I feel like I'm still kind of in, and at some point, I've always sort of wanted to build my business in a way that's as effortless as possible, right? And it sounds like a beautiful idea in theory, but of course, um, I can only get better at not forcing rather than just not force completely, right? So I feel like there's always like a gradual improvement in like, okay, I force and force less, and I just kind of, allow or follow my inspiration. But most importantly, I just started like to really listen to my body more again, because I felt that my energy levels were just not on the same level. And I've realized that sometimes like the things that I've done to be productive, they were kind of more like temporary highs rather than this very sustainable energy um, state. And so yeah, I decided to kind of naturally take time away. I mean, also just because, I had a very, let's say, lucrative year financially, and so I just suddenly had all that breathing space of like, okay, I can just take a moment. And I'm not the kind of person that's like, okay, I made this much money, now I want to 10x it like tomorrow. I'm more like, okay, I now have this much money, great, freedom. I can take some time off. I can sort of reevaluate where I'm going and make sure I'm going the right direction. So that started happening in early autumn or fall while we were still in Mexico, or kind of even end of August. And I just started to follow the little glimpses of like, okay, I want to create more art again. I want to do more cinematic videos. I want to come back to photography. I want to write without AI, and just kind of really coming back to analog ways, natural ways, like ways that are, feeling exciting. And of course, my revenue numbers like dropped. I mean, they're still there. Like, my products bring me revenue, but it's a direct kind of reflection of how much forceful effort I'm putting in. And forceful, I don't necessarily mean bad. It's just like, how much am I actually like launching, promoting stuff versus just allowing people to come to my products themselves, right? Um, and but it's a fun experiment, and for me, that's my greatest commitment. Is like I want to live my life freely and in enjoyment. And I think, yes, like there's importance in thinking long term, but I feel sometimes there's an obsession with delaying gratification. I almost feel like it's almost like a myth that, let's say, capitalism or the machine, however you want to call it, wants you to buy into. It's like, yeah, work hard now because at some point you'll enjoy it. At first it was like retirement, right? We go through 9 to 5 until 65 and then you enjoy it. But now it's the same with entrepreneurship journey. You're like, okay, like once you make enough money, you'll just enjoy it. But people keep going. Like look at Hermosi, right? Made like a shit ton of money and keeps going. And so it's almost like, wait, but what about like the gratification right now? What about the enjoyment of life right now? Not kind of this unconscious hedonism, but more just savoring, simple moments, like taking time to have coffee with your loved one in the morning, or, going on a walk without a phone. So yeah, that's how I kind of started to come back to this again, because this is what really matters at the end of the day. Money is just buying some freedom, buying like taking care of the practical things in life. And, of course, I'd like to make more, and I'd like to make it in ways that are aligned. But I think like we work in seasons, right? Like for me, it was like go, 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 launch things, create things. And I was like, all right, let's take stock and plant the seeds again, you know, take out a few weeds, and see what's going to happen in the next cycle.
Yeah, the enjoyment piece is so interesting because under that normal model that you talked about, by the time you're 65, you worked your whole life, then you get to enjoy it. But what does that really mean? What does enjoyment mean? Does it mean you go sip margaritas on the beach and just go into hedonism? Or is enjoyment different? Is enjoyment just presence? And I've started to realize that the energy I put into a business is the exact lifestyle I create on the other side. So if I create from force, or the subtle difference between energy and stimulation, if I create from stimulation, I need more stimulation to keep it going. Versus if I can slow down and create from a calm presence, 20% slower, it takes that same 20% slower calm presence to maintain it. So it's like everything we put in is going to come out on the other side, but it's so easy. And I get lost in it all the time. The stimulation, the rat race, the hustle, seeing everybody else going viral, needing to match it, needing to put out content every day. And I've done a similar dance in the past few years to what I feel like you're doing. Of back in 2024, around May, I had just launched a cohort. I was also working with Dan Koh at Cortex. I was super busy and I was super burnt out. And I went to Thailand with a backpack and had the intention of, I'm not going to let myself work for like 2 months or 3 months. And I found this entire different part of myself and life of like, whoa, I could actually imagine myself for a period of time never creating again, never doing business again, just being the yoga teacher at a hostel. Now I came back to a middle way because I feel I allowed myself to regain that presence and destimulate. And then this intrinsic passion was coming out of me where I couldn't help but create, but I needed that space to stop to then find it again, rather than keep going deeper into stimulation, more coffee, more energy drinks, everything. So it's super resonant. And I think it's inspiring for myself and others to hear, just because you are experiencing a pretty good degree of success doesn't mean you have to keep pushing. You can actually step back, reevaluate, figure out where you want to go. So I love it. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, I love that, because for me, it's ultimately like, you kind of feel what you want to do in this exact moment, right? And it might be that, yeah, like I feel like taking time off and being in Thailand and just, hanging out at that hostel and, shooting those water guns, like whatever you're up to, right? And just having fun. But then it might be fun to play the game of building something, right? And there's not kind of the right or wrong. It's just whatever is kind of suiting you in that moment, but more so even that chapter of life, right? And I feel it's kind of hard to tell sometimes, at least for me, is like, oh, like, okay, am I forcing it because I think this is a good idea? Like, I know my ego wants to, I don't know, be this, like maybe I want to, I don't know, be an artist and exhibit stuff. Is it really coming from the soul, or is it ego? So kind of always evaluating that, and not even dismissing ego sometimes, because even that could be like, okay, let me follow that and see, like, is that actually aligned? Or do I just trap myself again in a path that I don't really like?
Right.
And most of the time, yes, but there's also a lot of learning on that way, right? I might meet some people, I'll realize something about myself. So there's kind of no right or wrong. It's just all experience and exploring and kind of getting to know yourself and the world through your experience. So that's kind of how I feel about it. But yeah, I just feel that I don't know, it must be different, like where you are in the US also, like the environment matters a lot too, right? Like it's a very kind of go-go culture. I mean, some places will be different, right? Like maybe if you're in the suburb versus in the center of New York, it's different. But, here we're in the countryside and in a low season where, most of people around us are farmers or kind of older expats, or, a few young people building things. So it's very easy to take time because there's no kind of direct pressure to just be fast all the time. So yeah, I wonder how you think about that environment and like how that influences where you're at.
It's a great point. I mean, I wrote something recently about this, about how your environment, you literally metaphysically absorb your environment. You become your environment. We are not separate from the environment. We are one with it. And so it's interesting to note the difference between me being here or in Thailand, because here if I go to the gym, let's say I wake up, go to the gym at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m., I'm actually late. Like there's already been hundreds of people in there at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., grinding, going super hard on the weights, listening to music, energy drinks. Like that's the culture. Versus in Thailand, I wake up at 8 or 9 a.m. I'm one of the first people awake, and everybody around me is just waking up, smoking a joint, having a coffee, and like it's such a different vibe. And so it's been invaluable for me to learn to tap into both because both are a part of me. I like the slow lifestyle of wake up at 9 a.m., have nothing to do. And if I feel inspired, create something. I also do enjoy the grind at times and making progress and being much more in the masculine. But it's very interesting to note that, and it makes me excited to get back to Thailand for the experience of how is it going to shift my frequency. But you made a point that I'm very curious to kind of understand your perspective on this delineation between forcing something or allowing something, right? Forcing something because the mind and the ego says like, yes, this is the thing, cling on to this, versus the soul just can't help but like blossom and express this thing. So how do you distinguish between those things within yourself? How do you draw that subtle balance or that subtle distinction?
Yeah, I feel it's a really hard one, and I feel that usually I have like quite a time lag by the time I realize like, oh, okay, this was coming or is coming from the ego versus this is like from the soul. And I've kind of felt, of course, the more I develop my sensitivity and intuition and just cutting through the, the chaos or the bullshit of the mind, the more I was able to just tell like, okay, like, yeah, I feel like hanging out with this person, or no, I feel like this is not right for me, or I want to be spending time on this, or why is my to-do list so long? Like half of it is just made up stuff that I don't even want to be doing. So, sometimes I feel it's just kind of honesty with myself, but it's hard because yeah, sometimes even in the, let's say, and it's not so black and white, but like the inspiration that comes from the ego can still feel really exciting in the body. Right. I was like, oh wow, like yeah, it would be so cool to, I don't know, do this. And then suddenly like, okay, I'm doing it, but I don't actually really feel like doing it. Or, this curiosity that's somewhere else. But I feel one of the hardest ones also is the fear or the layer of kind of blocks, or because sometimes I might want to do things, or my soul wants to do things, right, intuitively, but there's an immediate block there, or like a fear, or because that fear is present there, I won't even get in touch with that thing. So I feel it's like at the core of it is listening, and it's hard to listen, I feel, if you're just running around like a headless chicken with so much noise around you, right, in a very busy job, in a 9 to 5, where like all your friends and your parents are telling you what to do because you're not putting any boundaries. Like, it's going to be impossible to get in touch with that thing. But I don't think you'll get in touch with that thing by sitting on a meditation cushion either. Like, you kind of have to go out into the world and try things. Just like, oh, I'm curious about capoeira. Like, let me go to a class, see if I like it. I'm curious about making videos. Like, let me just experiment and make one. Maybe I'll hate doing it. And running these kind of mini experiments, I feel, kind of give you that direct experience to be like, oh yeah, there's something here, versus, no, I was just in love with the idea, but actually I don't like it. Or maybe not in this way, and I'll have to try it another time or in a different context. So yeah, that's been my experience around that.
It's interesting because it's interesting that you say even if something is exciting to the ego, the body could still reflect that and say yes, because over the past few years, similar to you, I've been learning to move from my body, move from my intuition. What's my body saying? But it can be subtly tricky when the body seems to be excited and lighting up and expanding, but it's actually the ego. And like you said, I don't think it's necessarily bad, but you've got me reflecting on like, is there something within myself where I know it's the soul? And for me, and I'm just coming to this now, is like, if tears, or like I feel that subtle swelling of tears coming to my eyes, that is the soul. And it's very few and far between moments that actually hit on that. Like, I can think of a few moments of like, if I'm writing some piece that is not for business, that's not for metrics, but it's from my soul, the emotions start to come up, the tears start to come up. If I'm in some healing group or at some retreat center and somebody's having a breakthrough, the tears start to come up. That, I feel, for me, is the barometer of, is this the soul expressing itself to its highest degree? Because it's almost like the tears coming out of your eyes, at least for me, feel like the same expression of nature as a flower blooming. And that is like the spirit of the flower coming through. So it's like the spirit of me comes through. And it always, for me, comes back to beauty. Beauty is what evokes that from my spirit. And I know you have written somewhere, I can't remember where, but you said beauty will save the world. And I remember, like, right when I emerged from the jungle doing ayahuasca ceremonies, first thing I put in my Twitter bio was, I think, love, truth, and beauty, because it just felt so resonant. So could you talk a little bit more on that idea? Like, where did that idea come from? What do you mean by it?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll first of all credit Dostoevsky with that quote. And I'm sure it's been said many different ways. I think when I first even said it, I wasn't aware he said it, or it was somewhere in the subconscious. But, you know, I don't know necessarily his kind of idea around it, even though I love his work. But my interpretation of beauty will save the world is, it's through my own experience, because as you said, like, there's it's really the most beautiful things in life that move me to the deepest tears. And by beautiful, I don't even necessarily mean aesthetically pleasant, right? Like a beautiful gesture, right? Like, I don't know, when a man just offers an old grandmother some help with crossing the street, right? And with her bags, that's like incredibly beautiful. It's not necessarily like the most expensive impressionist painting or something like that. If even that can also, you know, like cause a response. But for me, it's something about, I want to say harmony, but maybe that's too vague of a word. But beauty, in that sense, kind of represents probably the soul, or God, if you will, or nature, or nature's will. And you know, kindness is beautiful. A good heart is beautiful. And so when I come across that and it touches me to my deepest core, that's when I know, like, there's truth in this, or there's sincerity, and there's meaning in that, even if it cannot be put into words. Like, things just feel right. And so for me, beauty will save the world. And, you know, and I think trying to reduce the world of beauty is, in a way to control it, to control people, right? If like, my parents grew up in the USSR, and USSR was not very beautiful for the most part, right? There were many artists, of course, that were there, but they were censored by the state. And if you look at all the buildings, they are these brutalist architecture buildings that just look exactly the same, right? Like, and I feel it's almost a way to sort of remove people from beauty, from that sense of wonder in the world. So they focus on the numbers, or productivity, or in this new religion, which is basically the Communist Party, right? And I feel it still happens today in subtle ways. Like, even if you look at modern art, like, I feel a lot of it is a scam, because modern art, a lot of it is not really beautiful. It's these crazy things that just, you know, come out, like a urinal that you put on the wall, or some object on the floor. And I feel it's almost, I mean, philosophically, it's interesting because it's challenging our assumptions. But at the same time, there's almost like a propaganda of, like, we will teach you how, you know, how not to fall in love with beauty, or that, you know, beauty doesn't really exist, or beauty is ridiculous, or, and yeah. So for me, maybe I'm very romantic at the core of my soul, but you know, I love the Romantic movement in the 19th century in Germany, because they, you know, after all this Enlightenment explosion of, like, science will save the world, they were like, well, what about emotion? What about feeling? What about the story? What about the human experience? And I feel we're at it again, where, you know, we're in this technological machine that just keeps getting bigger and faster. And it's almost like, what are we losing in all of that? Like, consciously, unconsciously, what do we have to give up? And each of us individually also, like, where are we giving up our humanity and our beauty to feed this, rather
Mm-hmm.
than kind of recognizing and remembering what we are? So yeah, I've been listening to this book by Paul Kingsnorth called Against Human Nature. It's about the machine, or like he uses the machine as a kind of metaphor for capitalism, the Western world, and it's been really really interesting, to say the least. But yeah, I'll pause here because that was a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of ideas off of it, and I think that deep within everybody, there is that longing for beauty. There's that romantic spirit there's that longing for presence. But with the conditioning, and you can even see it manifested in the buildings. Like if I go to Chicago, all the buildings, they mimic this rigid intellectual materialist ideal that we've created. They're not creating, there's churches and beautiful things there, but they're all from 200, 300, maybe even more years ago. Like new things that are beautiful are not being created because where's the money? The money is at the root in this capitalist beast, this machine. So that machine wants to fund more of that machine to prop up the machine more and more. But there are more and more people like you and myself that can start to see through it and say, we don't really want this. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out throughout the span of our lives, with more people first waking up, and second questioning, like, is this what we really want? Like, why do I want to just keep grinding away at this job, keep feeding this machine? Why? So I can have more resources to then spend on propaganda from the machine, Netflix, whatever it is. I mean, it's in my higher ideal, a big vision that I have someday, and I know some people share it, is I want to build a consciousness center. I want to build a school that is not anything like I actually just visited my old school, Northwestern, in a Chicago. And if you go there, there's beautiful architecture, but they're building a new business center. And now the business center is a 5-story glass ceiling, glass wall thing that just it's so materialist. They're forgetting what made that university so great and beautiful, and what makes all the great universities in Europe so beautiful is like this, there's this taste, there's this aesthetic. And so I want to bring that back, and I think other people want to bring that back. And I think even the place you're living right now, like in the background that I see, mimics that. Like I see the soul in the person that built that building. And it probably evokes a lot of inspiration in you when you sit down to write in that spot versus imagine writing in Starbucks. Like there's totally a different energy there.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, 100%. And that's it's so easy to feel inspired in a place like this, and it's almost unconscious. Maybe it's just, of course, there's a geometry and the visuals of it, but there's a soul to this space, right? Not just this Disneyland that was built like yesterday, and everything is a bit plasticky, and maybe some symbols evoke something, but really it feels a bit empty. And yeah, and that's the beauty of Europe. I mean, like, you have, at least in countries like Italy, there's still a lot that is preserved. And you can argue that maybe too much attachment to the past sometimes, that's, subjective. But at least, there's places like here where they really preserve and kind of keep the history of places. Like Rome is a living museum. Like if you go there, I mean, half of the city exists just to keep the history going, right? And yeah, I mean, there's space for the new. I mean, the new can be important, but I think in today's world, we're probably obsessing too much with modernity, the new, the next thing, and kind of forgetting the tradition, the past, where we came from, ancestors. And I think the pendulum is slowly swinging, but it's taking its time.
For sure. So the city where you're living, it seems to me, from what I've seen from you and what I've heard from you, that it's quite slow. Like I remember reading your article. I think it was called, what was it called? The Artist versus the Machine. And you're talking about how these people are just baking bread and they're living in this old way. Do you notice the materialist, technological, capitalist influences on more of an old classical Italian town like that? Or are these people kind of siloed away from it and they've retained this slow sense of presence?
Yeah, I mean, for sure it's there, and much less, of course, again, than if you'd be in downtown in some city in the US. But people can be on their phones too, and watch stuff. But generally, I notice here in Italy in general, like people are less on their phones than in other countries somehow. I mean, maybe it's where I am. Maybe it's because it's also older generation. So the population here on average is older, and they don't use the phones as much. So people are still grinding away. Like the reality is, it's here it's a, let's say, a poorer region in Italy. I mean, generally the south tends to be poorer here. So people are hardworking and they want to make a living, right? So they live their pace. Like everything closes from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. because people take like 3-hour lunches. They go home and cook and eat and come back to work. And I get annoyed sometimes because I wake up late sometimes and I want to go shop around lunchtime, but everything is closed. But that's the pace. And but at the same time, I do feel that actually I'm even slower sometimes than a lot of these people because they're really working in their 9 to 5s or whatever it is, like the gas station or going to their next client. And I kind of recognize, like, yeah, it's a privilege also that and what I've been able to do and what I've been able to build. I still believe that, I mean, probably like at least some of those people could also do it if they decided to. And yeah, and at the same time, for me, it's, I don't see this obsession with people building, I don't know, the next AI chatbot here, or kind of obsessing over the new tools. Like, I don't know if many people even know about AI here. Realistically, I mean, for sure, they've kind of heard, maybe they watch TV, but I kind of like it. I was in Portugal in Ericeira, which is this kind of surf town outside of Lisbon that's becoming like a mecca for all the indie hackers. Like Peter Levels lives there. There are a few others, and it's nice. It's kind of like compared to like a big city like New York or London, people are living at a slower pace. But they're still like just obsessed with the grind of like, yeah, like investing in a new next cool thing or building something big. And it doesn't always feel that it's coming from the healthiest place. Like there's almost like the kind of grabbing onto something, or the fear of missing out, or some kind of obsession. And I just, don't necessarily judge that, but I'm just like, oh, okay, like where does that land in me? Like what does that bring out in me? And yeah, but sometimes I miss it. Like here, maybe, yeah, it's hard for me to get into this flow of like working and building things because naturally I just want to enjoy the pace and life. And who knows, maybe I'll get bored of it. Maybe I'll need some stimulation. Maybe I'll find it online. But I also trust that this is the right chapter and this is the right space to be in right now.
Would you consider yourself to be ambitious still?
I mean, ambitious is a very relative term, I feel. It depends for whom. I think historically my friends would consider me as ambitious and kind of almost like wonder like how come you're so ambitious, or where does the ambition come from? But I feel that's been the case less and less now, or more recently. It's almost like that ambition quieted down, or I started to care about other things and simpler things that I think from our societal perspective wouldn't be considered ambitious. But to me, that might be, right? Like to challenge the normal way of living is ambitious in a way, or it takes courage, right? But for me, it's like, I'd love to build a house that's completely off grid and just live there and make art. And to me, that's an ambition that I enjoy thinking about, rather than building $1 billion tech startup with, investments from Sequoia and I don't know, all the big angels, and like I don't care about the status symbols. Maybe for sure there's some validation of like, oh yeah, look, I'm the cool guy who built an off-grid farm and like now I live here. The ego is probably always going to be present, but it feels a lot more aligned, like a lot more that is coming from a deeper place, or at least it's just the curiosity of the present moment. So yeah.
I ask because I've swung on the pendulum myself of extreme ambition. I'm doing economics at school. I want to be an investment banker at Goldman Sachs, to now I just want to be a hippie living in Thailand and do nothing. And now I'm kind of more on the ambition train of I want to build something that's quite aligned. But the word ambition is even interesting. It's like, for me, it kind of implies trying to get somewhere, pushing to get somewhere. But if you can reach this place, and maybe it takes ambition to get to this place, or maybe that's an illusion all in itself. But if there's nowhere to go, if you're completely content where you're at, then maybe the ambition stops. Or maybe the outward facing ambition for building a business stops, and then the ambition is channeled into building a family, building a house, right? I wonder if the ambition will always be there, or it'd be interesting to ask an enlightened master about this. Like, what do you think of ambition? Because I would imagine they would say there's no ambition, there's nowhere to go, there's nothing to do. But for me, there's still ambition there, and I'm going to honor that for now. But I've tasted what it's like to not have it as well.
Do you feel like even in the hippie phase, you still had ambition? It just kind of disguised itself as something else, like I want to become enlightened, or I want to transcend myself, and it's almost like there's still that kind of goal seeking there, but it's just not the same kind of goals anymore.
Yeah, I would say it's still there. I would say there was times. I remember one time, like, it was the most peace I probably ever felt. I was probably a few weeks into living in this hippie village called Pai in Thailand, and I was just chilling in a hammock at like 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, nothing to do, and just this peace overwhelmed me, and I had nowhere to go. But the ambition was still there. Like, I would go start writing an article just because I wanted to, or the ambition was almost channeled into like, how could I go to the most epic rave or have the most epic time at this party? So yeah, it probably was still there. It was just transforming in terms of where was it directed. And actually, there's been a few times, like even that trip or other retreats that I've done, where I've almost tried to quell the ambition completely and just be like, what would it be like to just be here and do nothing? But then, like, a part of me, I feel it in my body, just it's like, I'm here to do something, I'm here to build something. At least, like, from what I interpret to be a soul's mission or incarnation purpose, is I'm here to build something. I don't think I would be in this lifetime if I wasn't. So I don't think it's, for me, ambition isn't bad. It depends where the ambition is channeled and at what expense is the ambition there. Because I've done in the past, it's easy to lose yourself in the ambition, and then you become unhealthy or not happy as a result. But I feel the ultimate place to get to would be, I'm completely at peace within myself. Now I'm choosing to be ambitious, not out of fear, not out of scarcity, not out of reaching, but out of, one, I would say, obligation to God, or feel like this is my divine purpose, or two, for the love of creating and expressing and building something to uplift others. So I'd say that's kind of the North Star for me.
Yeah, that resonates. And yeah, I feel ambition can get a bad rep sometimes, at least in the kind of hippie circles almost. But yeah, it just depends where it's coming from and the intention, right? Maybe we can call it drive, maybe we can call it challenging oneself. And I feel, you can argue like Steve Jobs, like, was he creating from a place of pain because whatever, he was adopted as a kid, or was he just following his highest curiosity? And yeah, he was an intense person, but that's just how he was, and he built something really incredible. But it's not because he was like, I want to be a tech billionaire and that's like my dream. It's just like, I want to build cool things and I want them to be the best in the world, or something like that. And and that felt like a more, I guess, intrinsic ambition. than necessarily like a status seeking or validation seeking kind of goal.
Yeah. I remember hearing an interview with him where somebody said, "Would you consider yourself," I think it was, "a geek or a hippie?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm definitely a hippie." And that resonated with me because it won't make sense to some people listening to this, but to the ones who have gone into the hippie direction and maybe come out the other side or are still in that phase, like I think you have to go through the hippie phase to elevate your consciousness, essentially. Like there's a map of development, maybe you've seen it, it's called spiral dynamics, or the stages of ego development. And I remember this stuck with me so hard because when I was really young, like 16, 17, I was a super big, and I'm going to out myself here, I was a super big conservative Trump MAGA type of dude. I was 16, so I was quite unconscious at the time. Everybody around me was saying it. Then I went to college and started to meet all these liberals. And I was like, oh, I'm interested in what you guys are saying. But if I was to go tell my high school friends that, they'd be like, dude, you switched. Like, what's wrong with you? All this stuff. But then I found this model, and I found that I think it was stage 4 of the 9 stages of ego development was conservative. The stage 5 was the liberalism. And then stage 6 is being able to kind of see both things for what they are and not be trapped in them. So then it essentially, in that model, they say the hippie or the liberal is actually at a higher stage of consciousness development than the rational conservative. But I'm curious to know how that journey's evolved for you, because I've heard your story in glimpses. From what I understand, you were like kind of in the finance world, then maybe went on the pathless path, the hippie path, and then kind of integrated it into one. But I'd love to hear the story from your perspective on that weaving journey.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's been a big one. I mean, I grew up, I guess I would say, with an ambitious dad. And, you know, he wanted me to be in finance since I was a kid, basically. Or there was always some kind of unconscious like idea there. Like he bought me The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, I think. The favorite book of Warren Buffett. When I was 11, I read one page barely. I couldn't even understand what it was talking about. But and you know, in some ways, I'm grateful to him because I got into investing when I was a kid, and I sort of started to understand how this world works, how companies make money, and things like that. In some ways, I felt that, well, other parts of me weren't as celebrated, like my creativity, my artistic side. But you know, I finished high school quite early. I was 15, and I had no idea what to do. And you know, because achieving kind of dad, I guess, or a personality dad, like I just felt like, well, gap year is not an option. I just need to go straight to university. So I went to university, or college, as you call it, and I studied business because business was just is everything, and I had no idea what I was gonna do. I was doing photography. I liked architecture, but I had no idea if I'd be able to make a living with it. But then I kind of got into it, and business still felt like an interesting idea because, I mean, you can create anything in business, right? Like, I mean, there's so many moving parts to it, and I love the strategy of it. And then I worked in, I did a master's in finance, and I went to work at Bloomberg in London. I worked there for 5 years, and I'd say I was never. I mean, politically, I was never super engaged, but yeah, probably I would be somewhere on the right, because, libertarian, maybe, just like free market, less regulation, the market will take care of itself, lower taxes, and, business will save the world because it's the mechanism for human creativity. And, and of course, like kind of my past generations, they grew up in the communist regime, right, in the Soviet Union. So there was also a bit of trauma, like rejecting that sort of idea. And then sort of, yeah, when I went more the hippie route, let's say, like, started to question that. I don't know if I'd necessarily kind of go more left on the spectrum, maybe like more center. And yeah, like something like made sense about some policies of like, I don't know, better like rights for everyone, and for mothers to take longer time with their kids, to be paid by the government, so they don't have to come back to the job. Like it just sounded more humane, right? Even I had like a burnout at work and I couldn't work, and basically, I mean, some of it was paid by the company and then some by the government. And so I kind of felt I don't know if generosity of the system, because of course it's a collection of taxpayers' money that just sort of comes back to you. But I felt that, okay, maybe there's something here too, right? Like in the US, it always felt a bit too hardcore, at least from what I heard, like people have no paid holidays, right? It's just grinding and grinding. And yes, you can make a lot of money, but you have to pay for everything yourself. And in a way, it's beautiful because it's more responsibility, right? You take your responsibility upon yourself rather than relying on the government. But in a way, it's also like, it's not that your taxes are much lower. I mean, yes, a bit, but what do you get in exchange for that? So I question that too. But something around like the rage of the left side never really resonated with me, because it's always like pointing the finger and saying what's wrong, but never really offering a better alternative. It's almost like a teenage rebellion sort of energy.
Mhm.
And just to kind of generalize, of course, there are different perspectives. So yeah, and eventually I don't know, started to find harmony between those two parts in me also, the artist and the moneymaker, the hippie and the capitalist. And now maybe I'm kind of questioning all of it again, or trying to align myself as much as I can in the system in the way that I see it, because the system is imperfect. I'm also imperfect, but maybe I can find a way that I can live a life that I'm proud of and that I'm happy in the way that just suits me. And I feel that I hopefully do more good than harm in this world. And at the same time, yeah, have a good time, and it's, I cannot deny, like, I have to pay bills. I need to pay my taxes if I make money. There's some things that are almost non-negotiables. So yeah, and that's how, I build my business on those principles. And it's been a constant process of like, okay, like, am I aligned? Kind of always coming back into alignment. And I feel pretty aligned. But it's always taking the time and space like this to sort of redirect the attention and to really know what am I focusing on. And yeah, so I wouldn't classify myself as any of them. Probably I'm now sort of coming back to the importance of the past and the tradition, which might be kind of conservative. I think like we're going through that swing collectively in a way, but I wouldn't label it as black and white as that. I feel it's something beyond. But what I am recognizing is, even in the new age movement and the spirituality, there's still that obsession with the self. Like, what is my purpose? What am I here to do? What is my gift? And I feel there's kind of, that still disconnects us from the community. Like, okay, so what, your purpose or your gift, but what about helping the world, or what about being of service? And yeah, so kind of holding all our ideologies loosely, let's say.
Yeah. You make an interesting point at the end there with the obsession with individual purpose. But I don't think you can truly have a purpose unless that purpose is collective in nature, unless the purpose transcends yourself. And maybe, at least in my experience, it had to start with just myself. And I think it maybe does have to start with the self to get yourself to a capacity to then serve others. But eventually it has to transcend the self. And I want to dive deeper into like, where do you think you're going? Even if you don't know, like maybe just explore it. But I'm first quite curious about this transition point. So like you're at Bloomberg, you're doing finance, and then you shift and go more of the artist path. Even while you were working there in finance, like were you still pursuing your art, photography, creative stuff on the side, or had it kind of taken a back seat? And then you had a moment where you're like, I can't do this anymore, and you go to the other end of the spectrum? Or like, how did that transition happen?
Yeah. Yeah, it was I was 20 when I got into Bloomberg, just about to turn 21, and I was working hard. I just moved to London, and it was kind of go go go, and my ambition from the beginning was I'm just going to work for a few years, save up the money, invest it, and then start a company when I leave, and then I'll be good by the time I'm 30 or something like that. And then I can do the things I love, which was, for me, it was more art, design, like, or just any curiosity. And I kind of did that, but in a way I started to kind of fall into the just the race of working, building a body that I felt was buff and beautiful, and drinking, and then taking drugs, and then at some point I started to kind of feel void of meaning, and that I was just in this constant grind. And art, like photography, was there, but barely. Like, I only took my camera when I went on trips, and it was a non-negotiable for me. I'm like, my camera is always coming with me, and I would use it to take pictures. But as soon as I was back in London, I wouldn't take any pictures. And then at some point, I really started to kind of crash down, and I had my first psychedelic experience on July the 13th of 2018. And it was very intentional. I did it with one of my good friends who's done it before. And I just, it really opened my mind to just things I wasn't aware of before. Like, I'm, walking in the path that's not mine, right? Whether was my conditioning or from my parents, like, don't want to point fingers, but I was like, okay, it's time for me to kind of readjust. And I was just suddenly again in awe with the beauty of the world, including art. Like, I remember looking at a painting and just seeing how that painting was like a portal into something. And so there was kind of this pivotal moment that sort of really woke me up. But at the same time, I really crashed after that, because I suddenly came back to my life and I was like, what am I doing? And that's where I decided, okay, I'm going to work with a therapist. I'm going to figure out, like, what's blocking me, where am I not realizing? And so I started to do this inner work. And then I eventually, like a few months later at work, I just completely had a panic attack where I just needed to take time off. And I took 9 months off on sick leave, or like, I don't know what it's called in the US. And I was basically just meditating, going to retreats. I went through the artist's way. And one of the ways that I was healing was really just coming back to my creativity, like taking my camera and going outside to take pictures. Like, that was what was allowing me to be present, dancing, right? Like, all these things with the body. And then I realized that, okay, I want to live a more creative life. I don't know what it's going to be like. On my Vipassana retreat, I remember this voice inside saying, like, I just want to create something beautiful. I just want to create something beautiful. And so eventually I quit my job, and, I decided to become a photographer. Like, that was my kind of initial idea of what it's gonna look like. And then yeah, I worked as a photographer for a while. I still continued in, like, the spiritual realm. I had my first ayahuasca retreat, got into Neo Tantra. Then I got into this whole world of coaching, therapy, guidance. And yeah, and eventually I just kind of felt a desire to start a business again, because, again, that, something was missing in just that constant cycle of healing and creating nothing. And that's how I created my first business. I mean, I worked at a startup. In the meantime, I did many different things. And but then at some point I just decided, okay, I'm going to build a brand where I'm going to share everything that I'm creating, my art, my writing, and see what comes of that. And that's how Nik Huno was born. Like, I started on X in 2023. So 2.5 years ago was the summer. And then kind of everything that I've been dabbling in, photography, video, all the spirituality stuff, business, I just started to kind of put together under one thing. And it worked, and it's been pretty fulfilling. And I don't love the social media for many things, but it's been a great gift, to connect with you, also for us to have this chat, right? It wouldn't have happen otherwise. Most likely, maybe we would have bumped into each other in Thailand or something.
Right.
But this is the way it happened. So, so yeah, that was kind of the transition in a nutshell, I guess.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. I've never heard the full story. I'm sure you have it out there somewhere, but like I didn't know the depths to which you've gone, and it's actually quite interesting from my perspective because I know you to be a guide and a coach, but I feel like a lot of guides and coaches will spiel their story and their knowledge and their wisdom all the time. Whereas you seem to have it kind of behind the scenes. You've done all the work, you've had the experiences, and you kind of just embody it. And it doesn't have to be said. And that's how you hold the space, which is actually incredibly insightful for me to kind of experience and see. Um, but I want to go into this idea of alignment, like aligning yourself deeper with your soul, with your nature. I'm sure you've looked into like things like astrology, human design, gene keys. When you look at those different maps of yourself, if you were looking at yourself almost as an outside objective observer, what would those maps say? Like, this is who Nik Huno is supposed to be.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, in the end, a lot of them said different things and through different words, also depending on who's interpreting it, whether an astrology reader or an AI or myself through kind of piecing everything together. So, and of course, what I kind of pick and choose what resonates was always also like, okay, does it resonate because my ego also wants that? Or does it resonate because it feels deeper on the soul level? And I almost kind of feel that with these things, like the things that I tend to reject are the things that are true because it's harder to accept the faults. And
Right.
it's the really flattering things that might still be true. It's not that necessarily they're not, but maybe that's not the full picture and not the full story. Yeah, like Enneagram, for instance, is one of my favorite ones. I the first time I did it, I scored the most points on type 4, which is the individualist, the artist, the poet. And I kind of like, I'm not this sentimental dude. Like, this is not me. I don't know. Like, so I went into other types and I was like, yeah, I'm type 9, and then I'm type 5. And in the end, like, I came back to type 4 and I was typed by some other people. And I mean, the system isn't perfect. It's still an approximation. But yeah, I mean, Western astrology gave me a lot, like understanding my Virgo nature of, thinking in systems and being kind of, I guess, very mental about the world, right? Like it's ruled by Mercury. But then I have a lot of Scorpio too. So there's that depth and kind of seeing through stuff. And there's a Taurus moon. I'm very slow. That's why the slow life, that's what feels good for me. So that's where I find this kind of reflection of, okay, this might be true. So I think some of the pieces have been helpful. Human design, 5-1, investigator.
I'm a 5-1 as well.
Okay. Yeah. Like I investigate. That's how I like find things. Like, my partner and girlfriend, Yara, she finds everything through like connections and like meeting people. For me is like, I don't know, I research things. I find this like really random place on Google Maps and then we go there, or, something else through my kind of research holes. And maybe sometimes it's through people, but, her human design is different to mine. So yeah, I feel that those maps have been helpful, but I think probably the most helpful is just, this moment, because the map is kind of static. I mean, you can look at transits in astrology, you can argue, yeah, we can look at this kind of current picture, but, what is life asking me of right now? And, and it might be there's some excitement somewhere, but also what am I afraid of? I feel often actually like for me, it's doing the things I'm avoiding or that I'm scared of, where there's the most growth or opening, and just following that. And then also recognizing that I don't even have to do those. Like I can also just be, and that's the most delicious thing because that's where it's all about in the end. If I cannot enjoy life and I'm constantly running around creating things, I might leave this impressive legacy, but what do I care? My ego is not going to be alive when I'm dead.
Mm-hmm.
Right. but I'm alive now, and I might as well savor it. So yeah, that's kind of
It's
how I view
beautiful.
it.
I'm curious to know if you know what's your life path in numerology.
Uh, is that the one that you just sum up all your numbers in
Hmm.
the? Yeah, that's 4.
Okay. Okay, I could see that for sure. Um, and what's the day you're born on?
The 27th.
Okay, so 4-9. Interesting. I mean, we could go dive deeper into it, but I think it checks out, and you actually give me a new lens on the 4 because I know some 4s in my life. My dad is a 4, and he's a very practical, analytical, structured, disciplined guy and thinker. He has a little bit of artistic flair to him too, but not to the degree that you have. And now I see that 4, for example, can be manifested in attention to detail and design, attention to detail in art. And then 9 is the humanitarian, right? The here to end the cycles. So I love these maps. I think they're quite interesting. I think they can be quite helpful. I want to look at Enneagram myself because I've never really looked into it, but there might be something there for me. If you resonate with it, I'm sure I would too. Um, but yeah, maybe we could wrap this up. I'm curious to know at this current perspective in this stage, where do you think you're going? And of course, it's up to iteration and change, but what are you feeling drawn towards? What are you feeling most excited about?
Mm. Yeah, sure. Uh, I feel really excited about the idea of buying a home, or like building a home, buying land and some kind of structure and just, making it our home. And I love the idea of being off grid, or at least semi off grid. So I'm kind of researching where to do that, in Italy or France. I mean, it's probably going to be somewhere in Europe in the countryside. And um and yeah, and it also intimidates me because I don't consider myself very practical, but I'm learning all these things, how to work with the tools, and how to make things. And I guess just watching some people, even some friends, has been inspiring because they came from like completely clueless city people living in a flat where everything was kind of service for, to being able to build houses from scratch. um, so I'm really excited about living rurally in a way that's more real and tangible. Um, like I'm not like I don't want to optimize, like be in Bali in some cheap flat where I have everything taken care of so I can be online at the laptop. Like maybe 2 years, 3 years ago that kind of excited me, but now is I've gone through a big shift. And so hopefully that's as true, or we'll see what the iteration will be, or somewhere in between. And then besides that, I feel, I still want to create online, more from a place of, you know, like inspiration and excitement in a way that just feels right. And for me right now, it's video. It's these cinematic vlogs where, you can call it ASMR, or there's a term called Norwegian slow TV, where people just film like a train ride for 6 hours and nothing happens. And I love this idea of very long form that's very spacious and has very little narration. I actually want to talk less and less in my videos, because I feel, discussing ideas and concepts can almost be infinite. But how can we really embody the ideas or the concepts or life, or even just live and kind of inspire each other? So yeah, probably they'll be mostly on YouTube. That's where I want to do it. Some on Instagram, some on Substack. Those are my 3 main platforms. I'm kind of moving away from X, moving away from Threads. Been a bit disappointed in both, but also just don't resonate with it as much. And yeah, just committing to a place. Like we're thinking of getting kittens or a dog. Probably having children at some point. And all these things still feel pretty scary to my commitment avoidant personality. But they also feel right, or I feel there's a lot of richness that is on the other side. So yeah, and then I think I love creating online still, so I think I'll create new products. But again, those that feel more aligned and more inspiring. And then yeah, continue on this visual path of videos, photography. Like I want to print more also, like I collect photography books. I'd love to make a photography book myself with the photos I took over these years, and I don't know, just make more things with my hands that are real. So yeah, that's kind of a sum up of where I'm going.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you could figure out the online game, online business, all these things, like you realize you can learn anything. And I think you're providing a lot of inspiration to people that might be listening to this or following you of having the courage to transcend the game and trailblaze your own path and go against the grain and go do your own thing. Because I think within a lot of us, like I see it all over social media, talk about like the masculine urge to move to a farm and live off the land. Like that is in a lot of people. And so, I mean, you doing it is quite an inspiration. I'm still more in the stage of like, oh, I just want to go to Bali and be on my laptop all the time. But I also see when I look deeper and deeper that the stage that you're entering is in the cards for me. It's just there's work to be done in the meantime. There's experiences to be had. But I'm really excited to keep following your journey. It is a guiding light and a source of inspiration for myself, and I'm sure everybody listening. So I appreciate you coming on. It was really fun.
I appreciate you, Jack. Thanks for these words. And yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I feel it's, you know, experiences to be had. Like the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse is just live life in all experiences you can, and you'll get to know yourself through them. There's no one right way. So yeah, thanks for having me for this conversation.
Thank you.